libérer le président Gbagbo.
But others say the judge's decision, which may delay the trial for more than a year, is merely a temporary setback. The court did not dismiss the case.
We are not yet at this stage. Perhaps the prosecutor decided to withhold evidence for strategic reasons, because if she presented all the evidence today, it would give the defense an opportunity to build its case. So, don't worry, the prosecutor has sufficient evidence.
In a 25-page report presented on Monday, the judges gave prosecutors until November 15th to provide substantial evidence to support their charges against Mr. Gbagbo. Most of the evidence thus far has been drawn from reports by NGOs. Mr. Gbagbo is charged with committing crimes against humanity in the violent aftermath of the 2010 presidential elections.
Serious injuries.
Mali's outpost settlement of Kidal is described as the capital of the region of Azawad, which is controlled by MNLA forces. Reports coming out of the area speak of horrific brutality against black Malians by MNLA fighters. Hundreds of refugees are fleeing Kidal as the Malian army moves to flush the rebels out of the area. We have details in the CFI report.
They're exhausted and haggard after spending hours traveling by truck on the dusty roads to Gao. Just a few days ago, these Malians were living and working in Kidal, the capital of Azawad, the stronghold of separatist Tuaregs. They all have the same story to tell: how a climate of anti-black sentiment has taken hold in the city, how reprisals are taken against those who do not back the MNLA, the Tuareg separatists. Dozens of people were arrested, taken to prison, then expelled from Kidal, accused of spying for the Malian regime.
They told me I had to leave the city because I was not Azawadian, I was Malian. When they organize marches, they never see people with black skin marching with them. For them, we're part of Mali. We are not Azawadians. They say we give information in Gao, that we tell the youth in Gao to demonstrate so that the Malian soldiers can come to Kidal. They told the blacks, either you are for the MNLA and you can stay, or you are Malian and you have to leave for Mali. They took us to prison. We were there for 3 days where we had nothing but water.
Some 200 people suspected of working for the Malian army were arrested. The Tuareg rebels admit there were arrests, but deny this has anything to do with ethnic cleansing. Pressure is building up on the Tuareg separatists. Government forces are approaching Kidal. On Wednesday, they clashed with MNLA fighters in Anafis, a small town south of Kidal. France, meanwhile, has asked the separatists to lay down their arms.
Turkey's Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan is in Tunisia, the birthplace of the 2011 Arab Spring, but Mr. Erdogan says there will be no Turkey Spring. Back home, protesters are again in the streets, that is despite a partial apology from the government. CNN's Ivan Watson has more in this report.
Bird takes careful aim and shoots. The champion archer is training on a new archery range that was inaugurated barely a week ago by the Prime Minister of Turkey, Recep Tayyip Erdogan.
Prime Minister is a perfect person. He has reconquered our hearts. We are proud and we thank the Prime Minister for this place.
The new archery range was built in Kasımpaşa, the proudly working-class neighborhood in Istanbul that the Turkish Prime Minister still calls home. The mood here, very different from nearby Taksim Square, where thousands of demonstrators have been calling for the Prime Minister to resign.
The neighborhood where Recep Tayyip Erdogan grew up is located barely a mile away from the protests in Taksim Square. And while in some districts of Istanbul, residents have been banging pots and pans at night in protest against their prime minister, here locals proudly fly the flag of his ruling political party.
This neighborhood is a bastion of support for Erdogan and his ruling Justice and Development Party, or AK Party.
We trust this government, AK Party, and Recep Tayyip Erdogan. We trust too much.
Erdogan has repeatedly repeatedly dismissed the street protests that have spread across the country, calling them the work of a small group of troublemakers. On Monday, he reminded Turks that in the last national election, his party won 50% of the vote.
Currently, we are having difficulty in keeping at least the 50% of this country at home, and we are telling them to be patient and not to get trapped in these games.
Political scientist Cengiz Aktar interprets this statement as a threat.
If you put 2,000 people in the streets, I can put, 10 times more than that. I mean, this is a very irresponsible way of tackling the crisis, because that means, kind of civil war between people. I mean, is it the way you solve a crisis? I'm afraid not.
In Kasımpaşa, members of Erdogan's 50% said they would take to the streets to defend their prime minister if they were asked.
Hopefully it wouldn't come to that point. The prime minister's gathered millions of supporters with a single word. But those who love this country don't want turmoil.
We don't take the protesters seriously because they are the minority. We are already the owners of this country.
Ominous words from Erdogan's supporters, Turks who are convinced they are a majority that for now remains silent. Ivan Watson, CNN, Istanbul.
Time now to take our second break. Stay tuned.
warga tabaara ngi nii warga tabaara waaw moom la de warga wi sell na set na wóor na amut pëndax xam nga ko de te warga wi nii lañ ko defare nga ne ma waaye baal ma dolli champ boobu ba kaas bi gën a fees waay muy xoolal li muy sànni du li may waxatee ngi nii gañe napp télé loo gañe loo gañe yow da ngaa xamul ni warga bii ni mu sellee te neex xottu gi moo ko gën a neex mën ngaa gañe télé waaw mën ngaa gañe saaku ceeb mbaa bëteelub dawlin ngene mën a gañe welo ngene ma te li ci gën a neex it waaw mën nga caa gañe rajo warga tabaara moo gën ci warga yi gën a neex ci warga yi gën a silwise ci warga yi buuru warga yi buuri warga yi
warga tabaara bi nag ku ko bëgg fi ci Gàmbi da ngay dem fu ñu naan etin pictin warga tabaxa buuru warga yi.
And before we end this edition of the news, a reminder of our headlines. President Jammeh has called for early preparation for the upcoming planting season, this as the farmer folk look forward to the commencement of a busy period. Gambia Red Cross Society has lifted the lead on a $275 million budget for a raft of disaster management and emergency relief response programs covering a 5-year period. The Hague-based International Criminal Court has suspended the trial of former Ivory Coast President Laurent Gbagbo for want of enough evidence. And Turkish Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan has denied suggestions the raging street protests in Istanbul and other major cities could turn into a Turkish spring. That's all in this edition of the news. Thank you for watching. Join us at 10 for another bulletin. Meanwhile, enjoy our programs.
من الخوف والجوع ونقص من الأموال والأنفس والثمرات وبشر الصابرين الذين إذا أصابتهم مصيبة قالوا